We've talked about coaster manufacturers before, but today, let's break them down based on their best themed coaster. This is part 1 out of a 2-part series. Let's get started. Aerodynamics, Matterhorn bobsleds, located at Disneyland in Anaheim, California. This is a very important ride for the theme park industry, as it originally opened in 1959 with the world's first tubular steel track on a coaster. This coaster was placed with 2 separate tracks and an awesome mountain facade. This ride is family friendly, and while it is jerky at one point or another, I still really enjoy it every time we get an opportunity to ride it while at Disneyland. The coaster doesn't have any huge drops, but the Tomorrowland side does feature a couple more daring maneuvers. If you're a thrill seeker, that will probably be your preferred side. For only having 2,000 feet of track per side, it's a surprisingly long coaster, and you wind all the way down, around, and through the mountain. It's a good time. Our engineering, Primordial at Lagoon in Farmington, Utah. How about from a Disney park to an independent park in Utah? Pretty much the only similarities between this and the Matterhorn bobsleds we just talked about are the fact that they both go into a mountain facade, but otherwise they're completely different. Primordial is half coaster, half dark ride. Once you come inside the building, it turns in some ways into an interactive shooting dark ride. It's so cool that they combine these ride systems, and while I don't always love that everything is a shooter, it's such a unique experience. They really did such a good job with this, considering it's an independent park. Additionally, they have an animatronic in the queue line which looks really good. Hats off Lagoon, this is something special. B&M, Baron 1898 at Efteling in the Netherlands. As far as B&M dive coasters go, this is pretty much as immersive and as a full experience as you can get on these coasters. Not only does the coaster look great and it has a wonderful facade, but it has a complete story and pre-show. I don't think having a pre-show is necessary to have a really well-themed ride, but it really does help to tie in and make a complete story and a complete experience. It's nice that they dressed it up because the layout is pretty traditional. 1,643 feet of track, a height of 98 feet, but a drop of 123 feet, a speed of 56 miles an hour, and a couple of inversions with that near vertical drop. Efteling does a great job at theming, and an exhibit of that is Baron 1898. Chance Rides, Hot Wheels Twin Mill Racer, located at Mattel Adventure Park in Glendale, Arizona. If you couldn't tell by my choice of a coaster that isn't even supposed to open until next year, yeah, Chance Rides doesn't have very well-themed coasters. I don't even know how well-themed this coaster is going to be, but because there's no competition in Chance Rides' catalog, it gets nominated regardless. CCI, Underground at Adventureland in Altoona, Iowa. This coaster is basically a dark ride, so clearly it gets nominated for CCI. The stats for this aren't impressive. It's only 15 feet tall and it only has 900 feet of track, but it's really more about the visuals with a few small drops. Very interesting ride, and it's currently in the process of a long refurbishment. I don't hate the idea of what Adventureland and Custom Coasters International tried to do with this ride, but I don't know if the execution was the best that it could have been. The Din Corporation's coasters are incredibly lackluster for theming, so we're just going to move on to the next manufacturer. Dynamic Attractions, Mission Ferrari at Ferrari World Abu Dhabi in the UAE. Again, this is almost more of a dark ride than it is a roller coaster. Unlike the Underground though, this one is much more thrilling. 1,800 feet of track, a speed of 44 miles an hour, and a few inversions with those show scenes. This is a large indoor park, and the fact that they have so many awesome roller coasters makes it a bucket list park for many, including myself. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but this is a really interesting attraction. It also features a unique slide drop. This looks like a cool finale to the ride, and the only other coaster in the world that features this maneuver is the aforementioned Primordial at Lagoon. GCI, Wickerman at Alton Towers in the UK. Alton Towers looks like such a cool park, and it's how they theme their rides that is so cool. This coaster has a consistent theme, and the centerpiece in the middle of the ride and the pre-show before you board ties it all together. This is a family-friendly type ride with 2,600 feet of track, a drop of 72 feet, a speed of 43 miles an hour, and an overall family-friendly ride experience. In addition to the theming during the day, this coaster can look epic at night. Granted, that can be tough to experience with Alton Towers' short hours, but overall, this is a well-themed coaster that they did in partnership with GCI, and it looks like a good time. Gerstlauer, Mystery Mine, located at Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Dollywood also looks like a sweet park, and Mystery Mine is one of our more well-themed attractions. There's a talking bird animatronic in the queue, which is a nice way to get the experience started. And then once you get on ride, there are multiple indoor elements, and the second lift hill is nicely themed and it's also placed indoors. The theming adds to what is otherwise a pretty odd coaster from a layout perspective. Giovanola, Anaconda at Gold Reef City in South Africa. Juvenile only built 3 coasters, and Goliath and Titan don't have any theming, so the only reason I nominated this one is some of the rock work towards the end of the ride, which is really nicely done. I don't think this coaster is immersive or anything, but adding some rock work really does go a long way, and it looks great. It's a good size ride too. 2,447 feet of track, a height of 111 feet, a speed of 56 miles an hour, and 5 inversions. Assuming it's smooth, it looks like a great inverted coaster. Not the most well themed, but there wasn't a whole lot to pick from. The Gravity Group, Leviathan, at SeaWorld in Australia. This coaster isn't the most well themed on ride, but the queue and station has some wonderful theming. Speaking of that station, it has great lighting in there and a wraparound screen with the Leviathan. That looks like one of the world's best coaster stations. Totally awesome. That sets the tone for what looks like an awesome 50 mile an hour, 105 foot tall, 3,280 foot long coaster. The layout is fantastic, and for a lot of coaster enthusiasts, this really put Australia back on the map, so to speak, for roller coasters. Hopkins Polar Coaster at Storyland in Glen, New Hampshire. You know, this isn't a bad coaster at all, it's just significantly less thrilling than some of the other rides we've looked at on this list. Theming wise, this coaster has a great facade and an excellent station, with wonderful, adorable trains. There's little walruses on the front of each train, and while the coaster isn't very thrilling, it looks like a nice family coaster using the terrain. And I like that blue paint scheme too, tying into the theme even more. Intimate amusement rides. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida. From Storyland to Universal we go. This looks like one of the better themed coasters ever constructed, and it's said to have cost $300 million. This coaster looks incredibly well themed from start to finish, and it's 5,000 feet of track. First of all, the landscaping throughout the entire experience is very well done. Then there are multiple animatronics throughout the ride, and that's all tied together via an on-ride soundtrack. This ride really has it all. It's not too tall at only 65 feet tall, but it's 50 miles an hour, has a ridiculous 7 launches, and lots of other maneuvers, including a drop track and a backwards section. It's kinda ridiculous, and as I said, it has that onboard soundtrack. Onboard audio goes so far, and this is definitely one of my top bucket list roller coasters. Jinma Rides, vertical roller coaster at Tourist World in China. To me, Jinma just doesn't have a whole lot of well-themed roller coasters, though they've built plenty. This one doesn't look particularly well-themed either, outside of the shark that you go through towards the end of the experience. This is basically their knockoff version of a B&M dive coaster. I'm curious as to how smooth these coasters are, but if there's a better Jinma themed coaster that I just couldn't find, let me know down in the comments. Mock Rides, Slinky Dog Dash at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Orlando, Florida. Back to Florida we go, this time to Disney. And Slinky Dog Dash is a wonderful coaster, both off-ride and on-ride. It's one of the cutest coasters ever built, the train looks wonderful, and there's some great theming in the queue line. The theatrics and build up to the second launch are also great. This is one of the busiest rides, not only in Hollywood Studios, but in the entire Disney World Resort. It's family friendly, but it's fun for all, and it gets obnoxious queue times. As I said, fun experience though, and those small hills at the end emulating the movement of a slinky is a cute touch too. I really wish more parks did theming like Universal and Disney do. Speaking of Universal, Mauer, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios Florida in Orlando, Florida. This is a polarizing coaster. Some love it, some think it's too rough, but everyone can appreciate the onboard audio. As we talked about with Hagrid's a few minutes ago, onboard audio is a major part of improving a roller coaster, and Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket lets you choose your own song, which is a neat touch. Despite the oddness of having a vertical lift and have it not be followed up by a beyond vertical drop, it's a pretty decent sized coaster, and it goes 65 miles an hour through 3,800 feet of track. Mauer didn't really have very many options for a well-themed experience, but you can always count on Universal. So there you have it, part 1 of the best themed coaster from each manufacturer. Obviously, there's going to be a part 2 in this series soon, so if you don't want to miss it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. But that's all for me, thank you all for watching, see you all next time.